Hi, I'm Christopher Landon. I'm the director of Drop, and I'm going to be your tour guide for the next hour and a half, or your tormentor, depending on how you feel about this movie. This is, I was about to say this is the first movie where I didn't mess with the logo, but I still didn't let them play the Universal theme song. The score you're hearing is Bear McCreary. This is our fifth movie together, and Bear is a total musical genius. He's like a magical wizard of music. I'm really proud of this opening credit sequence because it's an opening credit sequence, which is pretty rare these days. A lot of people save the credit sequences for the end of the movie now. That's kind of like the trend. But I kind of wanted to go old school, really, because I wanted this movie to sort of be a bit of a love letter to Hitchcock and also sort of 90s thrillers. And I was really hell-bent on doing this opening credit sequence, which we shot practically. Everything you're seeing here is real stuff that we blew up with explosive charges. We all had to hide behind this like safety wall while we blew shit up. And it was a lot of fun. And then also you'll see a lot of elements that are actual props from the movie. So it's pretty cool. It was really, really, really fun to make this. And the company that did this is a company called Grand Jeté. And fun fact, the guy who's the sort of the brains behind this whole thing, his name's Howard Norman. Howard and I went to elementary school together and got to team up and do this, which is pretty cool that you get to do something like this with somebody you grew up with. So this opening is interesting because we had a very tight schedule, and we didn't really have time to find a location for this particular scene, which is supposed to be Violet's like loft apartment with her unpleasant boyfriend here, and husband, I should say. Anyways, this is like a makeshift lobby at the studio where our sound stages were, and our brilliant production designer Susie Cullen and her team, they were able to literally transform this really industrial, drab, weird space into what is now pretty kind of slick looking apartment. We shot this movie in Dublin, Ireland, by the way. And I'll get to that later because you're going to see something that I think is very specific. This is one of those really tough, closed set kind of scenes where Megan Fahey really has to go to such a heavy and dark place. And often we like to try and keep things as quiet and keep the room as small as possible so that the actor just feels that much more comfortable to kind of go to a place like this, because it is not easy for both of these people. So this is another kind of interesting location thing. And you'll see a lot of this house later on. This is a practical location. This is a real house that we found in Dublin. And when you're trying to find a location that looks like the suburbs of Chicago, most people would not think of Ireland. Because the architecture uh, in Ireland is very specific, and in Dublin in particular, and it's a lot of row houses. It's old. It's an old city, and so we had an enormous challenge trying to find a location that was passably American. I mean, I remember our first day of location scouting. I had just landed in Dublin, and I was jet lagged, and we were in this van, and we just drove around like for 3 days straight looking at houses. And I really started to become despondent because I thought, oh my God, it doesn't exist here. Like, what are we doing in this other country? And luckily we found this house, which is a really cool house. And I actually was like, I would like to live in this house if I could, because it's really beautiful. And then I realized, I guess Violet is also rich. But it was a very cool location. So this shot was so much fun. And our director of photography, Mark Spicer, who I also made We Have a Ghost with for Netflix, we had to build multiple rigs to pull this shot off. Because, first of all, we had to find a remote control car that was big enough to hold the note, and that we could also rig a camera to. But then we also kind of ended up with this kind of like dolly push sort of thing that was like, it was almost like they welded like a broom handle of sorts to the back of this sort of roller rig that the front of the car was mounted on with the camera behind it. And then that way we could actually push it ourselves manually, versus trying to rely on the actual motor of the remote control truck, because that motor was not strong enough to get us around. It just took a lot of weird R&D to figure out that one shot, but I'm really happy with the way it turned out. This is confusing. So this actress is Violet Bean, and our lead character's name is Violet. So you can imagine the amount of confusion that we faced on set when we would say, "Hey, Violet," and then they would both turn around. It was just so funny that we had an actual actor in the movie named Violet. She's awesome. She's so much fun. Our costume designer definitely had her work cut out for her, trying to sort of toe the line between like what is something Violet would actually have in her closet and own, but was still kind of matronly and sort of drab enough to sort of make fun of. But she was also responsible for the outfit that the character Jen is about to pull out of the closet, which was an even bigger task because we had to create a costume that I felt like would become sort of iconic in a weird way. And I'll get back to that when we see our actress Megan in the actual costume. But it was a big undertaking, and it took weeks and weeks and weeks to figure out. One of the really nice things about making this movie is how much personal chemistry the cast had. And like these people genuinely liked and cared about each other. And I always feel like that shows on screen. You know, it's not really something that you can fake that much. And we really were a bit of a family while we shot this movie. A lot of dinners, a lot of drinks.
Okay, ready to go. Wow, Mom. You look beautiful.
Now, this is Jacob, this little guy. So he's an Irish TikTok star. And I had never heard of him before. And we started to look at local casting because it's just, you save money. And, but our LA casting department had sent me a bunch of kids in LA. And I just fell in love with this guy because of just his whole look and attitude and his glasses and the bowl cut and the whole thing. Like, he was just such a cute freaking kid. And if you haven't seen his stuff on TikTok, he's amazing. He's like a little man trapped inside of a kid's body. Okay, so before I miss this. So this is Ireland and Chicago. Our VFX team did a brilliant job of blending the two together. And it was interesting because there were certain iconic buildings and Irish structures in the shot that we could have eliminated, but they're so beautiful that we just decided to keep them. This building that you just saw, incidentally, is a visual effect. Dublin does not have skyscrapers, does not have tall buildings like this at all. So we took this building, which is a big convention center, and we added a building to it. And then shot some of these interiors, but this elevator is a set. So it's really seamless, the transitions that we were able to pull off here between, an actual physical sort of practical location and then a set that we built. And then we finally get into the set, the Big Daddy.
Welcome to Palette. Do you have a reservation with us tonight?
This was a big undertaking for our production designer and her team. We built a 12,000 square foot restaurant that was elevated, I believe, about 10 to 15 feet off the ground so that we could move equipment underneath the set. There was an enormous amount of work and artistry that went into this beautiful, beautiful set, but I wanted the set to be a character in the movie. And so if you see all of these sort of gold-hued walls and you'll see gold bars around the restaurant, it's because I wanted this beautiful restaurant to become a gilded cage for Violet, a space that she's literally trapped in. And so we incorporated a lot of these sort of metallic elements and spaces that really are, very imposing while also still very beautiful. But yeah, everything you see here is a set. And, we really wanted this to be as immersive as possible. And so we had, real stuff everywhere. I mean, our diners, we had about 100 extras every day on this set. They all showed up and sat all day long with us, which was really impressive. Shout out to those people because they were heroes. And we had real food. We had a chef who actually designed our menu with real food. And then we had those specific dishes made, and you'll see some of them as we move along here. But like, we also had fake versions of those dishes made as well that were identical. Like, if you put the real food next to the fake food, you couldn't tell the difference. And that way we could have a lot of food coming in and out of the set without it like stinking up the whole set or rotting, because, this is weeks and weeks of shooting. And so it was a full operation. Incidentally, Brandon Sklenar, the star of the movie, he became obsessed with the food to the point where he was like stuffing his face and we couldn't keep up with him. He loved it. He would even take some of the food home with him after we would wrap because he loved it so much. So, shout out to the chef.
You look great.
Thank you.
You're very kind. Hey, well, to us, to get back out there.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Out there.
So, are you early or are they late?
The same?
Oh, yeah.
This is Ed Weeks, our piano player, Phil. Ed was such a fun choice because this is a really tricky role where it's like, you know, sort of like smarmy lizard lounge, but Ed brings a certain kind of panache and charm to him. So he's not entirely unlikable. He's kind of like, oh, poor functional alcoholic. But he's a great guy. One of the things we really wanted to capture in this movie is the sort of the awkwardness of dating. Like the whole concept of dating is so clunky and strange, and you know, you feel so vulnerable. And that's what I love about this particular moment. Because it's like they're all in the same boat, you know, and like everyone is just sort of secretly hoping that they're going to find that person that is the one. And, you know, more often than not, they aren't. Uh-oh, here they come, the memes. These are the drops, the digi drops. We had to call it digi drop, and it was kind of fun getting to sort of create our own platform. But everything that you're seeing here is real. This wasn't added in post. We had our phones loaded with all of these graphics, which had to be pre-cleared, which is a pretty exhausting, arduous process. But I thought it was really important for Megan to have this stuff, to be able to really see it and react to it. And so it was great to be able to have this stuff at the ready, which was all done remotely. And things would pop up, but she could actually drive it by touching the buttons on the phone. So she was in control of what she was looking at. It was pretty impressive.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, I'm late. I had to...
Oh, it's not fine. I mean, it is fine. It's not a problem.
And here's Brandon.
Sorry, I got a drink because I was nervous. It clearly hasn't helped.
I had a couple in the car.
These two are so beautiful. It makes you want to throw up. They're also both really, really, really good people. So because it's a big set, one of the challenges I would say that we faced was the fact that, like, you know, we needed a big city out there, and for us to do a giant blue screen would add a significant cost to the movie. And we just didn't have it. We didn't have it in the budget. And so what you're looking at out there is a translate, which is really, you know, just this massive drop cloth, you know, that's printed. And, but the dimensionality of it was so impressive. And, you know, you'll see that there are helicopters and things that move in the background. And so those were VFX elements that we were able to add to sort of activate the translate. And then you'll also see that, you know, our team had the ability to light the translate from behind, and they could literally turn things on and off. You'll see blinking lights on the tops of buildings. Those are our lights. Those are real lights that are blinking. And then sometimes we would be able to turn off like a whole floor of lights to just keep it constantly alive and moving. And, you know, I think it works pretty well, you know, and it's a very old school technique. But we were still able to apply some cool modern technology to enhance it. And so it was nerve-wracking, but ultimately really worth it, because without it, we couldn't afford to build this set.
Because I thought he should know who to root for now that he's a Chicagoan.
Big fake hockey puck. Couldn't get anything cleared. It's a little generic, but it works.
He knows with it, but he's gonna love it.
Feel free to send me a bill.
Hello, I am Matt. I'll be taking care of you two lovebirds this evening.
This is Jeffrey Self. He's just an absolute laugh riot. He's so funny,
Are you serious?
but also like not this person. You know, this is what I love about acting, you know, is that Jeffrey is actually a very kind of calm, chill
I'll do my best to make sure
person,
it is
off camera, but on camera, he's able to just sort of light this character up and become this person that we've all met at a restaurant, you know, like that waiter that's like, oh my God, he won't shut up. And you kind of love them, but you're also sort of embarrassed at the same time.
For now, I'm actually working on this sketch where I play like a hat on top of Allison Janney's head.
These were all little improv-y bits that he did, by the way. Like he came up with this weird joke. I had written something about that he was playing a mole on Natalie Portman's face. And he did it. It was kind of funny, but he came up with this other bit that I thought was much, much, much better. And that's what stayed in the movie.
Glass of Malbec.
All right. One Malbec.
With these little details, you'll see right here.
All right. Be right back. Malbec.
Like, it's just so weird and funny. And he's so lovable.
That should be Auntie Fun Times.
Everything okay?
Somebody keeps sending me these.
So when I read the first draft of the script, I was so taken by how simple the concept of the movie was and how it seamlessly integrated modern day technology into the plot and how it weaponizes these really kind of benign things, you know, that we all are used to and familiar with. But like when they get turned against you in this device that we all walk around with and stare at all day long, suddenly becomes your worst enemy. That was the hook for me. That was what really drew me to this particular movie and this project, and knowing how much we could build on that concept because of the relatability of it, you know, and how not only do we all have these things and use these memes and different types of technology, but also we've all experienced, I think, some measure of harassment, you know, on social media or online. Everyone knows what that kind of feels like. And this is a movie that just capitalizes on that and takes it to a whole different level. But that's what I think a good classic thriller does. You know, it just takes the familiar and it infects it with something dark. And I really love that.
It's like, if you're going to do it, at least like put some effort in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Photographer's nightmare, for sure. I'm not even going to look at this
Yeah,
one.
let me check just in case it's oh God. I'm just kidding. It's
Oh
not
my
a big
God.
one. Yeah.
These are all very popular memes. That was another thing that was really, really important to me and also to the writers, Chris and Jillian. We wanted and so all these memes, by the way, I would say 90% of these memes were actually printed in the script. And so when you were reading the script and you got to these parts, you saw these exact memes, which really enhanced the read, but it also gave us a roadmap in terms of like stuff we needed to go find and clear, because I didn't want to create a bunch of fake memes. I wanted them to be part of that sort of popular meme vernacular, if you will, so that the audience recognized them and be like, oh yeah, I've sent that one. But you've never sent it with this kind of intent. And again, that's that idea of taking something mundane and then weaponizing it and making it something that is actually scary. So he's looking at the DigiDrop app, which is the app that we had to create. But we were also able to kind of change the rules of how it works a bit to sort of fit our plot a little better. But yeah, it was actually kind of fun to create all these little apps.
What are you doing?
Solving a mystery.
one of the things that was interesting about making this movie too, because we're on this stage for so long and all these people really had to sit together day after day after day. Now imagine like you come to work on day one and, you know, you have a second AD say, hey, we're going to put you at this table with these people. Like, I don't think you fully understand like, oh, wait, I'm going to be sitting with these strangers now every day for 10 hours. And I really hope they liked each other. There were a couple people that I think eventually like did not get along. I think we even had a breakup at one of the tables at one point, like an actual legitimate, like they were kind of a couple and then they started to like, their relationship started to unravel over the course of the shoot. And then they broke up. It's just, I shouldn't be laughing at it. But there was like this whole real kind of real world thing happening at every table. And it was funny because when we wrapped on our last day of shooting, some of the people came over and there was actually one group of women in particular, and I'll try and point them out to you. Cause I know where they are. They're sitting sort of in the back corner of the restaurant. They're behind Violet, and they came up and they all had tears in their eyes. And they said, thank you so much. We had the best time making this movie. And we all feel like we just made lifelong friends. And so that was sort of the beautiful part of making this movie, was because these people were sort of forced to sit together for so long. They formed really tight bonds.
Okay. How's it go for Kelmar? Be honest.
I'm told it is our most popular special on the menu.
Great.
I will get that.
Uh-oh.
And I will.
So the real plot begins. This is one of the other reasons I was drawn to this project is I'm a parent. I have 2 young kids, and like, this is every parent's worst nightmare. The idea that there is someone in your house holding your child hostage.
I'll be right back.
And you are powerless to do anything about it. And that's what put the real sort of like lump in my stomach when I first read this script. Because I thought, oh my God, like, what do you do? Like, so this is super important. On screen texts. I knew that I obviously did not want us to stare at phone screens for the whole movie. It is absolutely boring and annoying. And so when we shot this film, we always made sure that we kept very specific angles and held negative space for where we knew we would put the actual text messages, and that they would be sort of alive and moving. You know, if you look at all of these messages as they come up, you'll see that they have subtle movements. Some of them are sort of pushing forward or pulling back or sliding left to right, or you'll see later on that, Brandon will walk through one of them. And so right here, you could see them moving. And the whole point of that was like, I wanted these messages to start to become a character. So it was both to sort of visually solve, how do we show phone stuff in a way that isn't dull, but also like, how do we start to kind of build the idea of a person behind these messages? And so it's not just the way that we present them on screen and how they're moving. It's also what is being said and how it's being said. And you start to really get a sense like, here, are you stupid? You're starting to get a sense of someone's personality behind the messages. And that was really critical for me. I didn't want them to just be sort of like flat and generic, do this, do that kind of stuff. It's like, this person is having an active conversation with her. And so we had a lot of interesting things that we had to tackle, and we wanted them to be alive, but not distracting, So it took a while for us to kind of figure out what this really should look like and how it should appear. But at the very least, the bare minimum was that we knew where they were going to go. So every single time you see one of these, we had already predetermined where they would go, how big they would be. It was tedious at the time, but it was really, really, really worth it, because I think that it really helps enhance the language of the film.
Everything okay?
Yeah, just a little bedtime emergency.
So one of the challenges of this movie is that, you have a lot of scenes where you just have actors at tables in a single location, and that can get very dull very quick. And so Mark Spicer and I, we talked a lot about how there's almost two modes that we're filming this movie in. And there's the sort of traditional coverage, which is kind of what you're looking at right now, that, you sort of like over shoulders and two shots and things like that. But then whenever Violet is in her own head and she is in these sort of weird moments of having to confront this threat, the angles change and they become less reliable and steady. They become sort of like askew. And you'll start to see us begin to employ other visual devices that put the audience squarely in Violet's POV. And we're about to see one of the first ones now. How we make the room go away and a spotlight comes up on individual people who are staring at her menacingly. But then, of course, we snap out of it. And we're back into sort of a more traditional type of coverage again, because she's re-engaged with Henry. But this is a language you're going to see throughout the movie, where we're in these two modes all the time. We're in the I'm on a date mode, and then we're in the, oh shit, how do I stop this mode? And we're in Violet's head. See?
Let me check. Thank you.
The way she's looking around, these kind of odd angles. Oh, she's back. So I do want to give a brief, because she's about to get up and start walking, a brief shout out to our costume designer, Gwen, who designed this outfit that Megan is wearing. And it was a combination of like, we wanted something to be striking that popped in the room. It needed to be really attractive and unusual, but it also needed to be functional because she has a lot of stunt work coming up. And I thought she nailed this. Just an absolutely stunning, beautiful design. Grabs your eye, but it's really comfortable. And I know this because on our last day of shooting, they made one for me and I had to wear it. So on our last shot of this movie, I walked onto set wearing this jumpsuit, and I don't think I've ever seen a crew laugh so hard as when I walked on that set wearing her outfit. It was pretty funny. There are photos to prove it. I hope they never get out there.
Right. We happy?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you guys let me know if you need anything else, okay?
Thank you.
All right.
Sorry about that. That was crazy.
This is another element of the movie that I was really drawn to. This idea that like whoever's doing this to her has an unusual amount of control over the space. They have gained access to security cameras. They've planted microphones everywhere. That she is indeed trapped, and that she really can't do anything without this person seeing or hearing it. And that just adds to the paranoia of the movie.
Good evening. Just want to make sure there's no problem with the table.
Nope, everything's great.
That's great.
Okay, good, because this is the one you reserved.
This is Sarah. She's amazing. I just love the like classic ice cold hostess. She just nailed this. There's so many good actors in Ireland. I really want to do like another shout out to the sort of the Irish acting community. Because that was another thing I was a little nervous about. Am I going to find actors that can sell an American accent, and, will they look right? And is it going to be clunky? And, sometimes you see movies and you're like, oh God, but like just the absolute unbelievable amount of talent in Dublin. It was really quite special. And if you've never been to Ireland, highly recommend it. The nicest people, Such a beautiful country. I was not paid by the Irish Tourist Board, by the way, to say that.
Are we ready to order?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. My lady, you first.
Ooh, decisions. How's the duck salad?
Oh, it's like my favorite thing in the menu. Like, I love it. It's got this like candy ginger and these cashews. It gives it like a real crunchy kind of vibe. It's really good.
Again, sort of keeping this idea, this conversation alive in the way that messages appear and move and drop and disappear, and just kind of keeps this whole thing alive.
I'm going to do the Kobe filet.
Choice. Do you want the 8-ounce or the big boy 12er?
Better stick with the 8.
Okay. Medium rare?
Medium.
Okay. And
It's so funny when you make decisions about how you're, what you're going to use. Like this watch, for example, it's such a like, oh, it's a watch. You just pick a watch and then that's the one you use. But like, it was funny, like when we were looking at all these different props and things, it was like, oh, this clasp is super hard to like unhook. Like it's going to look weird on camera. Like all those little every little tiny detail in a movie that you have to think of. Because if you pick the wrong thing, it kind of just bones the whole scene. Or you have to cut around it and it's awkward. So it's always crazy when you stop and think about the amount of just crazy decision making that goes into every movie. Like everything on this table, the glasses, the cutlery, the dishware, the food, everyone else's costumes, just thousands and thousands of decisions that go into this. And hopefully it creates something that feels really just natural and recognizable. Uh-oh. Documents, tax records, embezzlement. One of the things that was so heartbreaking about finishing this movie was that this whole giant, beautiful set just went straight into a trash bin. They literally just destroy the whole thing and throw it in a trash can. It's like, oh, it's so pretty.
My mom got me that watch.
Oh, really? That's a bummer.
Yeah.
Well, look, it's got to be around here somewhere. I'm sure.
I really wanted us to like have like a dinner when we wrapped in the restaurant on our last day, but it was too complicated, so we didn't get to do it. But I wish we had.
Quickly run and grab it. Sorry.
I mean, even the bathroom set is beautiful. Like it's so cool what they did. Like I don't think I've ever been in a bathroom that nice in my whole life. I wouldn't leave it. I would just take the world's longest. No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to go there. Now, the risk of a movie set bathroom is that sometimes crew members forget that it's not an actual bathroom that functions. And I made another movie where we built a bathroom set and a crew member just decided to use the toilet. And, but there was no plumbing. So that was, really gross. So plot device number 2 kicks in. Another thing that I really fell in love with when I read the script was like, okay, she's got a hostage situation. She doesn't really know what's going on, but like, oh wait, this is what she's really here for. And again, little weird, funny decisions where we had like 9,000 different kinds of vials to choose from, and we had to just find the one that just fit the set and the look of the movie. And this is what we landed on. By the way, you just saw the word kill in red. That was another really fun thing to do, to be able to kind of just manipulate some of this text to emphasize her situation. This next shot is something that I was just absolutely obsessed with when we did it. You know, it's obviously our set with a really cool lighting cue. There's a spotlight on her face that we actually sort of eliminated the source of the light in VFX. And then this becomes an extension, a VFX takeover, so that we could pull further and further away from her and then make her disappear, to really just kind of emphasize how once she's been tasked with killing Henry, you know, she's in an unwinnable situation. It's like she's been dropped into an abyss. And I really wanted to create that emotional
Did you find it?
feeling in a visual way. And I just felt like, wow, if we just see Violet just vanish into this black pit,
I didn't.
it really felt like that puts you inside her head of just how much despair she's feeling in that moment, how helpless she feels. But she's back on the case.
Thanks for I'm sorry. We're just fully booked. Another time. Okay, thank you. Thank you for calling.
Excuse me. Sorry. Just curious, did anyone else specifically request a table tonight? Maybe the same time we're dining? I just want to make sure that we didn't accidentally take someone else's.
You're at the right table. Excuse me. Ready?
Sorry.
Screen City. This is what I call this one little area at the hostess stand. Because there's just a lot of screens. I don't know, when you make movies, you begin to like hate phones and cameras. It's just, there's so much that goes into it, and it's so simple, but like all this crap that you have to shoot, and you just start to lose it, and you're like, you know what? I just want to make a movie that is set in 1842, before any of this shit existed, so that I never have to shoot it. But you can't make a movie like this in 1842, so here you go.
Coconut calamari. Here we go.
And that really was coconut calamari. It was an actual real food dish, and I heard it was good. I don't eat calamari, so I can't tell you. This scene originally, like, it was so complicated. There were so many plot elements and devices and things that we were trying to wedge into it, and it just became too heavy, expositionally heavy. And it was like, no, let's just simplify it. This is just about her making one last attempt to find some outside help and getting caught, but then still figuring out that she can solve, or at least begin to solve, a little piece of the mystery of who it might be. My favorite sound transition. There. The little things, guys. Makes you feel really happy.
Hi.
Hi. You again.
Yeah. You've been waiting here for a long time.
I'm meeting my sister. She's stuck on the tarmac at O'Hare.
So that little piece of dialogue there that was off camera was actually something that he recorded on an iPhone and sent to us, because we made a slight adjustment to the scene. But you can't even tell. It's amazing what you can do on an iPhone and how it ends up in the final movie.
Right. Sorry. Didn't mean to bother you.
No bother.
Another fun fact, I believe we sold some of the furniture in this restaurant at the end of the shoot. or some people got to take it. I don't know. I forget if it was sold or they just got to keep it. I didn't get any.
Not leaving, are you?
Yeah. Look, it's clear to me that Toby really needs his mom right now, and I think you're just too polite to say it. So I'll let you off talk.
Please don't go. I'm so sorry. I know I've been so distracted all night, but I really don't want you to leave. Please stay.
You don't have to apologize. We can pick it up some other time.
Again, this is one of those moments that needed to become very inside of Violet's head. And our editor, Ben, really the way that the cutting pattern that he uses here is really interesting, and how with the sound design and the music and how we start to kind of move into this sort of quicker cutting pattern. Boom, 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 until we have this. And then we're back into that really cool POV lighting, because she knows this is the last chance she has to save this. And she better do something about it, because if he leaves, her son's going to die. And it was so interesting because we had tried a couple different things here with sound and with music. And then one day I was looking at it and I just said, turn everything off. Like no sound, just perfect quiet. And this moment came alive. It was amazing to see how pulling all of that out actually made the scene work. And then, of course, once they break apart, all these sort of, atmospheric sounds come back in, the piano, the crowd, a return to normal.
Well, you folks.
But I love the sort of like the very subjective kind of POV that we place the audience in this movie.
I think we're going to stay.
Really? Oh, plot twist. Okay.
And again, bravo. Like this person watching her and that personality, coming through was really important.
Yeah. How do you feel about wine?
One of my favorite things to do in movies is always this kind of setup and payoff thing. And this is a classic example where we hear something referenced as a joke at the beginning of the movie, but then it comes back, and this callback ends up functioning as a plot device, because hearing this song triggers this idea for her of how she actually might have a last-ditch way of reaching someone who can help her. And I just think it's really fun when movies are able to sort of do that and sort of introduce an idea that seems just like a throwaway, but then it comes back.
Love to. Let's see here. What we got?
It's really big. Heavy to carry.
Got a bunch of Pinots here. What do you recommend?
I mean, some.
That joke always kills me. He can't say sommelier.
Like the reds, and the one from Paso Roble is just as good as the Napa Valley stuff.
There's a lot of off-camera stuff that is said that is actually really funny if you pay attention to it.
The entrees will be right out.
Can you just give this to the piano player? Say it's from me.
Oh, I will.
Thank you.
That was really nice.
Well, he did play my song.
It's like his 27th martini of the night. I would be on the floor. I guess he will be soon, too. Incidentally, Ed, who plays the pianist,
How long have you been working for the mayor?
also actually played the piano beautifully. So he would actually play sometimes.
I mean, I'm just a guy's best photographer. It's not like I'm his best friend.
Is he a good guy?
So one of the really complicated things about this movie, and we actually spent weeks with the whole AD department trying to figure this out, which is it's an actual restaurant that has to function like a restaurant. And one of those things is timing. When people are arriving, how long are they sitting at their table? You kind of had to actually map out their courses and time it so that we knew when it was time for table number 22 to get up and leave. And how long does that table sit empty before a new group arrives and sits down? And everything had to be sort of mapped out in a very complex and elaborate timeline so that it never became a continuity problem for us. Everyone is always where they're supposed to be at every given moment. And it was just one of those things that like I just didn't think of at first until we actually started to really look under the hood of making this movie. And I was like, my head is going to explode. And luckily there were much smarter people around me who were better at figuring out those kinds of things, because it was a real complicated ordeal.
I'm sorry to do that. I got work call I gotta take. Is that okay?
I owe you. Of course. Take your time.
Okay. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Again, Bear's score just does so much. Just really puts you in her head. You just sort of feel her anxiety. You really needed that drink. I had the duck salad. It was pretty good.
And the Kobe filet.
And this was the dish that Brandon was obsessed with. Kobe filet. He ate, I can't even count how many steaks over the course of this shoot.
That wine.
See, you screwed up.
Sorry.
There's that sort of personality again. Falling is a hard thing to do in a movie. We obviously put pads down, but you still have to have a lot of trust to just to like let your body drop that hard onto a surface of any kind. So it's always a little nerve-wracking when you shoot stuff like that. So true story. When we were in post-production, we were on the mixing stage, which is where you do all the sound for a movie. I had to bring my 7-year-old son to work with me because we didn't have anyone at home that could watch him, and my husband was out of town. So I brought him to the stage, and he didn't want to. There's like a little room that he could go sit in on his own, but he was too scared to sit in there, and so he sat on the stage with me while we were working, and he brought his Nintendo Switch and his iPad. So he had plenty of things to kind of like look at. And, you know, doesn't want to watch this movie because it's boring to him. You know, it's like people sitting at dinner tables. So he's like, you know, he never looked up from his devices except for the scene you just saw where the masked guy grabs the little boy and like hauls him aggressively upstairs and throws him on a bed. And so, of course, my son had nightmares for like 2 weeks after he saw that and was convinced that a masked guy was breaking into our house every night. And I felt like the worst parent on the planet. I was like, how did I even let that happen? But on the flip side of it, I was also hoping that maybe it was like some sort of like horror movie primer, because one of the things I'm most excited about is watching horror movies with my kids. So maybe a little terror is okay. I don't know. We'll see. If he needs therapy, we'll find out.
Weird.
She's so good here. Having to be so manipulative, steer the ship. So many jokes. Again, this is like one of those really dumb, seemingly simple things that this is a joke I really wanted to put into the movie. This whole idea that like every single person at the table has a credit card that they want to split the bill on, which is like every server's nightmare. But this tiny little thing of her getting up from a table and her bag falling and a watch spilling out, like, so simple and yet so complicated. So many like monofilament wires and like timing and like, I don't know how many times we had to do that shot to get it all right. And I think that's another thing that a lot of people don't realize when you're making a film, is that like so many of these shots are timing dependent, and you just have to keep doing it over and over and over again until it all just happens at the right time. And that was one of those shots. Again, simple, but always knowing where we wanted that text to appear, how it sort of curves following the shape of the bar. So this next moment is another very sort of POV-ish moment for Violet. But on the day, I realized I wanted to have a waitress walking past Violet with a birthday cake and a sparkler, not just because of the visual element of it, which I thought looked really cool at this frame rate, but also because it's a celebration of life. And Violet is walking over to her table to deliver death in the form of these shots. And I loved that juxtaposition of having this sort of celebration of life and death unfolding as she's, passing. And I wanted that music to almost feel like a dirge. And so that was another thing that I worked with Bear on, was to kind of create a sense of it being like a death march. This is another shot that is so beautiful and so cool. And man, Mark Spicer and his team just absolutely nailed it. The isolation, the terror, the hopelessness of it. I felt really bad doing this scene because, you know, this kid, like, his mom had to, like, put him there and then she had to, like, walk away and, like, stand behind the crew. And he just sort of naturally, of course, cried and you feel like the worst person. But then you get this really good beat and it's all worth it. And then, of course, mom rushed in and grabbed him and picked him up. Everything was fine again. But I was worried that the kid wasn't going to cry. And then I was thinking to myself, like, what are we going to do if the sweet kid doesn't cry? Like, can I pinch him? I was like running through all these things in my mind. Like, what is legal? And then, thank God I didn't have to go anywhere near any of that. And I don't think I would have anyways, because I'm, like I said, a parent and I'm not here to torment other people's kids. This is one of my favorite scenes in the movie. I just think it's really emotional, and I think that it encapsulates, I think, one of the hardest things about sort of opening yourself up to romance is, you know, allowing yourself to be really vulnerable and open and reveal your fears and your flaws to someone that you barely know. I mean, and Megan here, like, this is just total masterclass. I think she's such a great actor. They both are. Like, she feels everything she's saying.
I didn't.
The speech is so important to her character's arc in the movie, you know, because at the top of the movie, you know, she's got it together and she's she's a psychiatrist and she's helping other women who are survivors of abuse. And you really get the sense that, like, this is a person who's in control and has, you know, really has a handle on her life. And when she is put into this terrifying situation, she realizes that she isn't. And you really start to kind of peel some of these layers back and you reveal that she feels like she's a bit of a fraud. And that she let her own son down. But the completion of that arc is that she still keeps fighting and clawing her way out of this situation until you can become the hero of the movie. And what's really interesting about this too is that, you know, I love choosing Brandon to play Henry because, you know, he's a big guy. He's like 6'2", 6'3", very broad, like he's imposing, physically imposing. There's a softness to him, but he's a physically imposing guy. And what I really loved is that, you know, I wanted this sort of big, strapping, handsome dude to become the damsel in distress. It is a reversal of that trope. And Violet is actually the knight in shining armor. Like, she's the one who has to save him somehow. And the irony is that he doesn't even realize what kind of danger he's in. Like, she is at every turn risking everything to save his life. And it's just a really cool flip of that kind of conceit, that sort of Disney kind of thing. those prom kids were so nice. They were such good kids. It was really fun working with them. It was so fun to be on this set, you know, come to work every day. And I would sometimes just go and sit at a table and like talk to everybody and get to know them. It just was like a family. There's a shot coming up. I'm going to point it out. And oh gosh, I don't even remember who. I think it was our A operator who grabbed the shot, and I didn't even realize he had grabbed it. And it was just a shot of the shot glasses, and we, you know, hear the conversation happening in the background, and Ben, you know, put the shot in the scene, and it kind of just caught me off guard when I saw it, but I was like, oh my God, like that's brilliant. Like our focus is on those shots. It should be this angle. This was a tricky one. Payoff comes later, of course. Oh, he's such a smarmy douchebag. When you call someone good girl, like, screw you. That was all part of it. We can start to hate this person through the way that they interact with her, the patronizing nature of what they're saying. Again, the way that we shoot this is a really wide angle. Like it's just, everything feels off, and it just contributes to the sense of like how fucked up this whole situation is. We had to build a special rig to pull off this shot here.
Oh my God. Henry, I'm so sorry. Oh wow, I really could win the award for worst date ever.
She really could.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I was gonna get rid of these pants anyway. I'm just gonna go.
Henry's the nicest person
Clean up.
on the planet. I think we can all agree.
Here's
By the way, this actress, this is Gabrielle Ryan, and she just nailed this moment in particular. You know, this sort of like, I think so many bartenders are sort of armchair psychologists, you know, like they spend so much time interacting with people, especially a lot of people who are vulnerable, you know, who are in a situation like this on a first date. So they're almost like therapists. It's like hairdressers, people like that who like just their whole world is about just kind of small talking and communicating and reading people. And I loved the idea that this woman has kept an eye on this person, this patron, because her spidey sense is up and she's very protective. And I love that about this character.
Yeah.
So this role, Richard, you know, this sort of feeble, sad sack kind of nervous Nelly guy, you know, on a bad date. This was such an interesting audition because, you know, this is Reed and I saw our casting director, Terry Taylor. We were auditioning some other roles, and she said, hey, at the end of the meeting, she said, hey, I want to show you something. And she showed me Reed's audition, And
I don't remember.
I have never gotten chills the way I got chills from this guy's, just his audition and the choices that he made for this character. There's like, he's kind of a little bit on the spectrum. He's got these tics and these things. And I also started to realize how much he was, when he's talking to her, how he's performing to the room, knowing that people might be looking over at them. And so he's smiling a lot and he's being really gracious in moments. And then, of course, he's also just being the most evil, maniacal person on the planet. And those turns, like the smile, but then like the way he delivers a line where you're like, oh, this guy is dangerous. It's a great, great performance. And you see the overlap, you know, the types of messages he was sending to her. And then to meet him, the real him now, it all adds up. So you'll see this couple getting up in the background, right? So they're walking out. So we needed to clear that table. And then I think at a certain point, we'll replace them with a new couple because that couple is a stunt couple. And so we had to kind of transition certain people out of the shots that follow this scene so that we could be ready for what's to come. Again, subtle, simple things that you have to kind of plan for so that it all works out and the continuity is maintained. Or Phil, he was a hero in the end. This took a lot of orchestrating. You know, we actually had Richard placed at that bar throughout that whole scene. So if you go back and watch the movie, if you're really, really looking closely, you can see parts of his suit in the background. And you also, in a couple shots, will see he's not at this table anymore. So kind of fun, subtle little things to kind of go back and find. But this is what I'm talking about, an example of him just being really charming, like thrilled about this dessert, wanting to share it with her, you know, again, performing for the room to cover his own tracks.
The camera over your table, I mean, they recorded you spiking that shot.
This was a beast of a scene for both of these actors, by the way. Like it is a long scene with an enormous amount of dialogue. And, you know, again, to pull something like this off and keep it interesting, you know, you've got to move the camera around a bit and you've got to change your angles and, you know, swing some lenses and stuff. And it's like, so they're doing this over and over and over again. And it is very hard to keep something like this fresh, you know, but they both they both pulled it off. It is a real testament to both of their acting chops.
Comrades.
This whole sequence of events took a lot of thinking and noodling. And I remember at one point early on in the writing process, I wasn't satisfied with Violet figuring out a way to give Richard the wrong shot, which would then become the right shot so that she could trick him. I just kept saying, there's got to be something else that she does that is the ultimate chess move, something that she does where she really outplays him because he's so arrogant and he's so cocky that he wouldn't even suspect it. And that's when I figured out this dessert and how it tied into her story, because I felt like those two things were very important and integral. They needed to be connected somehow. This sort of the abuse from her past and the abuse that she was suffering now from this person, and how far she's come and how she turns it against him. So, it was all building to this. And, we shot this stuff at the end of our schedule because we had to just absolutely trash the crap out of this set. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot. I love pandemonium. I love movie pandemonium. Like when extras are screaming and running and like the whole thing. It was just like it was so much fun to do it, especially on this movie, because everybody had been sitting for so long that like to finally have this like outburst of energy and like all this stuff was just a lot of fun. And we're getting into what is easily the most complicated sequence in the whole movie. This took so much planning and so many departments working so closely. And this is from the very, very beginning. We're dealing with multiple things. We're stunts, visual effects, plates that were shot, VFX plates shot in Chicago, stuff that was plates that we shot in Ireland. Just an enormous amount of stuff. That was just, like I said, it was a big, big to do to pull this off, especially on our budget. But, I think it's all pretty seamless now, and it's really, really, really cool. And it was, an earlier version of this was like way more complicated. And we realized that like we couldn't afford to do it the way it was scripted. And so we had to kind of reverse engineer some stuff and kind of pare it down. But in the paring down, I think it became a little more grounded.
You're gonna be okay. Look at me.
And it actually made it more suspenseful. And this is another thing that I love about this movie, is that the structure of the movie is very much like a roller coaster. But, up to this point, we've been on that ascent, that first climb that you take on a roller coaster. And then once,
27.
Richard shoots Henry and the pandemonium breaks out, like we're on the down, and at this point, this movie is just flying. And I think it's a lot of fun. A lot of fun. This was also tricky too, because, again, we're in Ireland. So, cars are different. People drive on the opposite side of the road. The steering wheel's on the other side of the car. And, it took a lot of work to just find cars. Like we had to get, I also had to play it like, what kind of a car does Henry drive? Like he's kind of an artist and he doesn't make a ton of money. And we were able to find this old Saab, which they don't even make anymore. And we had to find 3 identical ones, so that we could, rig them and do stunts. And it ended up working out, Practical with some additional stuff there. I love it. We're in full 90s thriller mode now. We kind of stepped away from Hitchcock and we're into something a little bit different, which I think is really, really fun. I love this shot coming up right. That, yes. So good. That one too. All this was a practical location. This was all that house. Sometimes I wonder too, because a lot of times people don't know exactly what you're filming in their home. And so I always wonder if they watch this and they're like, oh God, horrible things are happening in our house. I actually lost a location because of that once. The family actually ended up reading the script a week before we were supposed to shoot there. And they were like, nope, not in our house. So that was fun. Again, this is all Ireland. So we're having to reverse the flow of traffic and, change all the signage. A lot of trickery to make it look like we're still in the United States, but I think it works pretty well. One of the other things that was a challenge in this movie is that, we knew it's not like I go into movies like, I want this to be an R-rated movie or I want this to be a PG-13 movie, but we knew this was not an R-rated movie, that it was very PG-13, but there was still enough violence and intensity that it was a really tricky line to straddle. This is clearly one of those sequences where it's we were really pushing it, and, we had to pull back quite a bit on some of the blood. I think that first, when we did this, that first shot to her shoulder was really gory. It splattered across the wall and the MPAA was nope, too much. So we had to pull some stuff back, but really minor stuff to kind of keep it in the right lane. But it's always a bit of a dance when you're trying to make something that is still really visceral and intense. So got another really, really cool shot coming up here that took an enormous amount of rehearsing and a lot of different kinds of rigs to pull it off. But I think it looks rad. And this is sort of like a Texas switch, where we pull her up on the rig and then our stunt performer lands over there. But again, seamless. Awesome. And I also just love this guy, like, stalking her with this giant knife stuck in the meat of his, like, chest and shoulder. And obviously this is meant to bookend what we saw in the beginning of the movie. And, again, I think it really enhances Violet's journey through this movie. I came up with this idea pretty late in the process, what's about to happen. I wanted this to be such a surprise, and it's a big swing, but I think it works. And I know it works because I remember when we did our first test screening, this moment got the biggest cheer in the theater, and I felt so relieved because I was like, it's a tricky one. But I love that her son actively participates in stopping the bad guy. And that we pay it off again. It's that thing of like that setup and payoff. We saw this truck early in the movie delivering a cute little note to mom. So we've established this kind of language that this is a thing that he does. And, instead of a note, he just sent her a gun. Why not?
What authorities claim was a plot to murder a key witness has now led to explosive...
Now, this, I'm not even sure I should point this out because it really just is like pointing out something bad. But I'm going to do it anyways because why not? So we shot this scene twice. And, the first time we shot it, we were short on time. We were actually really rushed on time. And we were supposed to almost have like a full day to shoot it. And then we ended up with like less than half a day. We actually only had like 2 hours. And this was Brandon's first day on the movie. And it's really hard when you shoot the end of the movie, early on. And it just was, I admittedly felt like I had miswritten, or, we had kind of approached the scene the wrong way. It was comedic, but it didn't have any sort of gravitas or weight, or it didn't have a proper sense of closure. And so we reshot it. And then when we were in the edit and I was kind of playing around with it, it got too heavy. And so we had to create a hybrid. So here's what I'm trying to point out, which is the bad thing. If you look at Megan's hair, it's going to change because the hair continuity was off. So, and different hair. Now it's really subtle, and I'm really hoping that, and so far no one has really noticed it. I haven't heard anyone actually call it out or notice it, but it was one of those things where no one ever anticipated that we were going to actually end up blending the scenes together. But in order to achieve what I really wanted, which was some levity, some humor, but also this kind of closure, the sense of like, they're going to go on another date.
Boring.
Oh, yeah. Sounds great.
How do milkshakes sound?
And then, of course, the classic, everything's going to be all right with a good needle drop.
Strawberry girl.
Every time I make a movie, I have like 8,000 different songs that I put on a playlist. And it's always fascinating to me to hear where I end up.
I ain't there yet.
And that's Drop, guys. Thanks for watching it with me. Sorry if I'm too chatty, but I guess that's the whole point, right?